Welcome back to the Enlightened Misfits podcast. I am Lauren Perlingi, your host, the intuitive human design business guide, trauma-informed healer, and the creator of the 90-second method, where we talk all about emotional regulation, visibility, leadership, and building a business that honors your energetic blueprint instead of burning you out. So in this space is for leaders, visionaries, and people who do things a little bit different. And this conversation today is going to be powerful. We're going to dive into leadership without pressure, decision-making without hesitation, and what it really feels like and is to operate from that highest level, not just from when things calm down or when everything feels like it's like on fire, because I know that we all feel that way. So I am joined by Jon. Welcome, Jon, a leadership growth and small unit coach who helps high performers lead from authenticity, operate in alignment, and grow in real purpose. Jon, I would love for you to introduce yourself from your own words and tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lauren, for having me on first and foremost.
First.
My name's Jon Sheldon. Good. Zoom does have John, not Jonathan. Only my aunt calls me Jonathan. Um, but I'm a leadership and development coach. What that means is a little bit different to most people, and what small unit means is really I tend to work with leaders, business owners, individuals that are in the work still to this day, not necessarily just making decisions from a boardroom or from a office space. So I like to work with those types of people. Again, small unit just really means that the leader is currently still actively doing the work and running a team of some sort or trying to grow a team, right? I work with a lot of solopreneurs as well. What got me here? I was a small town kid, graduated with like 60 people in upstate New York. Ended up joining the Marine Corps at 17, get out of my little small town. I ended up doing 2 deployments to Iraq in the height of the Iraq War, so 2005 to 2009, as an infantry squad leader, which means that I was just in charge of 13 Marines. And infantry is just, kicking down doors, doing patrols, etc. After that, got out, found a job very randomly in finance after I got into an internship that a best friend, we joke about it now, but kind of conned me into, and that turned into a 14-year career, ranging from, running my own financial team of 4 all the way up to being the director of sales for a very large national financial planning company. And from there, I started Bellawood Coaching while I was in the midst of that directorship role that ended up spurring into this awesome career and personal brand and practice that we exist today. That's kind of high level.
Yeah, I love that, especially because then again, thank you for your service. I want to say that
I
first
appreciate
and
that.
foremost.
Thanks.
And when you say like combat leadership, what has that taught you through, especially with your high leader positions like in corporate? Like what kind of pressure does these high level corporate executives and leaders completely misunderstand that you have seen?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think we're in a trend right now where there's a lot of, look, call it what it is. Most of the time, if you've done the right work on the front end, meaning you've taken the time to understand yourself, your people, what type of leader you are, what type of leader you're not, what type of decision making and what types of decisions you like to make and what types of decisions you don't. Sticking to where you're good, I think it becomes not an easy, but an easier way of being in the moment and making smart tactical and strategic decisions. Where I think that's the key is like when if you take the Marine, right? We'll dive into this. If you take the Marine, it's generally I think the movies get this totally wrong.
Yeah.
You look at a guy like Chris Hemsworth, and it's like this guy's 6'2", Chris, right? Like guy's awesome, right? But he's
Right.
also like in his mid to late 30s now. The majority of the military in general, and especially the Marine Corps, are 19 to 21-year-olds that are from a very similar upbringing from me, meaning either inner city kids or small town kids. Like there's 90% in my experience were either one of those 2 demographics. It's just different, right? We're smaller. We're meaner, we're tougher, right? Then you kind of get from the movie experience. And why I bring that up um, is before you ever like deploy and become this like combat leader, you do thousands of hours of practical application of making decisions, of frameworks and models, and living and practicing what you preach, and living that life of a leader, right? Not just reading a book on leadership. The first book I read on leadership was in my mid of my professional career, quite frankly. The rest of it was learned, call it on the job. But learning it on the job, I think is a misunderstatement too. Is like you got to practice it. When you get into those decision-making frameworks, and when you get into those really tough environments, and that's what I think that they miss. They don't do enough job, or they don't do enough practicing what it means to be a leader, what it means to be a performer. They're always just playing at it. And if you don't do the work behind the scenes, it's really, really tough. The internal and external work to understand who you are, what type of leader you want to be, and where do these situations come up in a static environment instead of a kinetic one. It's incredibly challenged to do that work in the moment. You get confused. Like, you got to think it's like, it should be more like muscle memory, right? These strategic and tactical decisions, if we can build frameworks around how our brain works and how we compute these types of things, that's when you can get down to this. You said 90-second framework that you've built. That's when you can get down to this practical application of making smart tactical decisions, strategic leadership decisions in the moment. Without that, it's incredibly challenging.
Yeah. And I love that you brought this up too, because I hear, and I'm not going to say it's a buzzword, but people keep talking about leadership and I'm a leader and stuff like that. So, and I asked the question, well, what does that mean for you? Like
Mm.
what, and you to the T, like you described it, of like you need to actually have like work. Like you need to actually have, you know, times that you actually are a leader versus just calling yourself a leader and then leading from that place. I mean, I guess you could do both, but I believe that you also need to have some type of, place that you've already did this within yourself. And, for you, it was, being in the Marine Corps,
Yeah.
or, doing that at like a young age. And I think that most of us were not, we didn't take that path, so it's kind of like starting with the book and reading it about the book. And same thing too. I don't even think I've ever like actually read a book about leadership,
Mm.
because I feel like that comes from a place of, where like that behavior, like how do leaders behave, and or corporate America, it's not always the best example of that, right?
Yeah, I'm not gonna. Yeah, absolutely, I agree with you. I think that you need to define who you are as a leader, first and foremost. But
Hmm.
sometimes it does get prompted by a book, right? There's a great
Yeah.
book
Yeah.
actually that I read in the last couple of years, and that prompted the way that I think about some leadership traits that I've decided that I look and challenge some of those. But that tested framework, I think, is really important, because again, when we go back to corporate America, um, the majority of people, like one of my biggest annoyances right now is when I'm working with an organization and everybody just blanket uses this term leader, like you just kind of mentioned.
Yeah.
Realistically, the majority of people, when I walk into an organization, that they're defining as leaders are sales managers
Yeah.
of one way, shape, or form. And that's not to say that, and this is where I think it gets kind of screwed up too. Like, that's not to say that sales managers aren't 100% necessary and critical to organizational success. They are. They absolutely are. But
Right.
by definition, at least how I define it, would be a sales manager's best interest is in the company's best interest, right? A leader's best interest is the best interest of the people that they're leading.
Right.
There's a big difference there. You
Yeah.
you can't be
Yeah.
a leader. You can be a leader and a manager at the same time, but those two things are distinctly different,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Leadership, if you're like, hey, you got to get your numbers up, that's not leadership. That's sales management.
Right.
Congratulations, you're a good sales manager. That doesn't
Right.
make you a good leader.
Right. Yeah. And I love that you said that too, because yeah, that's exactly what I feel like I see a lot too with a couple of my own clients too, of like, they come from these, very, very high achieving jobs and they say leader. And I always ask them what the difference is. And they eventually see the difference of like, oh, they're working for somebody else and then working for
Mhm.
themselves and trying to, I think that was the biggest thing that I've seen with them of like, oh, okay, I feel the difference because I came from there versus here, which is it's not I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I always just like to ask other people's perspectives because,
Yeah.
it's always nice to hear it's like, oh, okay. Okay. We'll, like I think it's like more of like the leadership behaviors translate well, but like what are some of the leadership behaviors that you see that haven't translated so well
Mm,
from like the corporate world versus, somebody that's coming from corporate, like, and then
yeah.
they have these behaviors and then some of them work and then some of them don't. What are some of those behaviors that you see?
I think the number one behavior that I see in corporate America that just doesn't work is this thought process that I've already made it, so I
Mm,
don't need to do it anymore, which is, in my opinion, not, again, leadership. Like once you take on that helm, there's this word that I've grown to love, and it's a very simple one, but I think it's a powerful one, and that it's cost. There's a cost to being a
mm,
leader,
yeah.
and you have to pay it. And a lot of times when I'm working with new business owners or scalers or people that are, scaling their teams, or somebody that's been in that position for a while in corporate America, they often negate the cost that you have to pay to be a leader. And a lot of that is, this is going back to a Marine Corps term, is like sometimes it means you're going to have to go back to filling sandbags with your dudes. You know, like sometimes that's what that means and that requires, and the level of respect that drives by leading from the front, um, and doing the work again, I think is incredibly helpful and incredibly valuable. And I think that's the one that I find missed the most, because I hear this all the time. I'm not doing that. I already did that. I've already done that game. I've already played it.
Yeah.
Cool. I
Yeah.
agree with you. And you've earned that. The
Yeah.
second you put on the leadership helm, you have to forego that type of ego. It has to go away,
Right.
because because this is, I think, sometimes I really feel like leaders in corporate America forget we'll call it the water cooler conversations,
Yeah.
right? It's like you were having them 15 years ago, man. You
Right.
know what we're talking about when you're not around. You have a chance, you have an opportunity to change that right now. And it's these small daily actions that and the other thing is that leadership's not, like if everybody loves the type of leader that you are, you're doing it wrong. I'll openly say that. You're
Yes.
not doing it authentically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing too, is especially in 2026, is everybody wants to be loved and liked. And it's
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I get it. Don't be in, like, can we swear in here? Is that cool or no?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, of
cool.
course.
Like, yeah, don't be an asshole for sure,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's that piece of it, but there's also this massive overcorrection where we have to be the leader for everybody, and we have to be everything to everybody. It's like, no, you don't. You
Yeah.
do live in an individual. This is your skin that you're living in. Nobody has your thoughts, feelings. Like, these are yours. These are yours. And
Yeah.
you get to define what type of leader you are. Because here's what I have realized, and I think it's going more into this direction, is authenticity matters most, and it always has.
Yeah.
And now it's becoming even a bigger thing, because now, especially with AI, it's like, what is real and what's not? It's like, no, 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 be
Yeah.
authentic, because that can't be recreated.
Right.
And by being authentic, everybody isn't going to like you.
Right. Yeah. I was gonna say, I love this conversation. It's interesting that you just said that because I said this to a friend yesterday and she, like we collab on different stuff. And I said, look, I literally said, not everybody likes me. There's a lot of people that I know that don't like me. And when you just said, it was like clarification and validation for me and when you were like, if everybody likes you, you're not doing it right. And I said to myself, well, maybe that's just how it's supposed to be. Not
Mhm.
everybody's supposed to like me. And maybe that is actually the right thing to do. So for you to just say that, I'm like, well, I guess I'm doing it right. because
I,
I
I
felt that. I wholeheart and I, again, I feel like a lot of us, we do want to please people, but at the same time, it's like at what cost? Like you said, at what
yes.
cost
At
am I
what
going
cost?
to
There you go.
do that to uh at what level am I going to do that? And it's just not something I'm going to risk. I've done that before, and I feel like that is powerful when you say about authenticity, because we all are different. So it's really important to find your passion, right? And find what, you want to do and your framework and, how you want to lead and not follow everybody else's. Cause I think that's another thing that I see in the industry too. It's like, do this, this is going to make you this, do this. And it's just like, that doesn't
Yeah.
work for you. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like one of those points. I wouldn't call it annoyance, but um, this is like part of that like there's so many good things. Like we know a lot about the dangers of social media, right? There's a lot of good things about social media too,
Right.
obviously.
Yeah.
Um, but one of the things that is this cautionary tale is like, don't you've got so much information coming at you constantly now.
Yeah.
Make sure that you know who you are before you dive into that so you can sort it, I think, appropriately. And that's where it's like, yeah, definitely take leadership advice and habits and pillars and frameworks from others that have come before you that have proven their worth, maybe proven their ability, whatever those two words really mean to whoever's saying them. And there's also this piece of it's like the more you dive into yourself, man, I think you just get better results. At least I
Yeah.
feel better about it.
Yeah.
I think it's funny too. Like I had a collaboration call back in, end of last year, some point in time. And you know, that was one of the feedback that I've gotten. And I've gotten that a couple of times in my career as well. As like, one of our joint clients said this. And I just said, good, good.
Yeah.
Like if like, yeah, good. Cause that means I'm being authentic because that's exactly how I meant to come across. And if they
Right.
aren't connected with that, that's not, this is going to come across weird, but like, that's not really my issue.
Right.
It just is. It's not anybody's issue. It just is,
Right.
and I'm not going to change everything about who I am as a leader, as a communicator, because of this experience that somebody else not in my skin had. Now look, obviously, if it's a big issue and something that I want to change and something that I go back and self-reflect on and say, you know what, maybe I should change that. Absolutely. I'm not telling people to be blinded, by
Right.
by maybe some of their insecurities or some of their faults, like self-reflection. And I'm a coach. Like people literally pay me for this.
Right.
If I suggested that you don't listen to anybody, I wouldn't have a business. Um,
Right. Right. Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
not it's
We
not
get it
that.
that you're not saying that, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What you have to start though with your core and then move from there.
Yeah. And especially too, because social media is so loud, I feel like it's been a huge thing lately of like worrying about what people think of you. And I
Yep.
think that, I'm somebody that I guess, do I worry about what people think? I don't know. Like I don't feel like I do, because it's like I kind of just do what I feel like it, using in like my intuition and my discernment of like how I operate. And I do listen to people like, oh, okay, if I hear it more than a couple times, I'm like, okay, maybe I actually need to figure out why this keeps
Yeah.
repeating. That's
Agreed.
different,
Agreed.
right?
Yep.
But if it's like
Yep.
one time of like, okay, so they don't like me. Okay. All right.
Yep.
Like, all right, that's fine. And then uh, kind of getting curious about why. And then I'm realizing that I'm like, oh, it's an insecurity of theirs that is
Yes.
like I'm mirroring back. And it's kind of like using that. And I'm saying that because I've had multiple conversations with clients about this, and like that's stopping their visibility of showing up. And I'm like, okay, we got to figure out what this pattern is and why this is stopping your own visibility to show up because of somebody else's opinion. And it's
Yep.
like, differentiating, like Mel Robbins says, like differentiating, like everybody is going to have an opinion, just let them, and then like figure out what you're going to do. And I feel like that is a huge, especially emotionally, I think emotional structure is like a big mistake that leaders make and they rely on, like without having
Yep.
that self-awareness. Would you agree?
I would 100% agree. Yeah, because they haven't done, like we started the conversation, they haven't done the work.
Yeah.
They just haven't.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like, and what would you say like another big mistake that leaders make that you have seen when they are relying so heavily on emotions, like in structure versus not structure with like self-awareness?
Yeah, I think what once yeah, it's a good question. I I think that there's this really bad tendency for leaders to go down and do the work that we just talked about,
Hmm.
and start to become authentic.
Hmm.
But their then their actions aren't in alignment with what that means. Right. And then
Yeah.
this isn't like a
Yeah.
regurgitation of the last topic. It's something different in my mind of, there's a piece of like, again, going back and doing the work, right? And becoming that type of person and owning the cost to it.
Hmm.
And then there's another thing of doing the work and then in the moment being influenced consistently and not showing up when you're called upon. It's
Right.
it's that it's that it's like, what does it mean to you? I take the word leadership as something that's super. It's like one of the most powerful words that I use, and so that, like, is it overused? I don't know, but what I do know is that it's much more powerful than people make it out to be. There's this
Yeah.
responsibility that you have,
Yeah.
and if you're not in alignment, not even your actions, but you're not in alignment with your daily activities or your monthly activities, it's how you're showing up for yourself. And I think that's where it comes down to, as I'm kind of working through this question, is how do you show up for yourself is the next thing I would say that leaders really struggle with when they kind of mastered, like, I'm putting other people first and I'm elevating others and going down that road. It's like, okay, well, are you showing up in that way for yourself? Most of them are not. And there's this swing that it's like, yeah, go do that and be that leader and be that human individual. But are you living that yourself too? Not just
Right.
openly talking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got some leadership, tenets that I use. And some of those things you have to call and put in self-reflection. One of them is, responsibility. It seems kind of basic, but you got to be held responsible for actions. And there's been times in my life where I haven't held myself responsible or hold that responsibility to the actions that I've taken. You know what I mean? But it's like, you want to go do this and you're preaching that or doing these types of things, but are you living that yourself as well? Like, because then you're not truly authentic. You can build this authentic leadership style and communication style all you want, but if you're not living it yourself, it'll never translate. And you'll get out of that word that I started with, alignment.
Yeah. And I think that that's really powerful because that is actually the energy that goes in that I see that goes into, I mean, because I see it for myself of like when I started, promised myself I was going to the gym for 3 days a week or whatever, like whatever it is. And then I
Yeah, yeah, it's
backed
a good
off. It
example.
was more of like, discipline, like what am I doing, or like where am I focusing my energy? Like I'm an entrepreneur, like sure I'm a mom and a wife too, but it's like I schedule my days. So what's going on, Lauren? Like what
Yep.
are you doing? And it started to show up in my business of like showing up for calls, being on the podcast, going to other, like doing it started to show up places that I was like, oh, okay, I need to back up. And I think that that is powerful because it's like you have to hold yourself accountable first, and then or it's usually mirrored back to me in like a client call or something like that.
Yeah.
Like I get
Yeah.
it. And I feel like that's powerful too, because they're like, Lauren, you're always on the same wavelength as us. I'm like, I'm always going to be. Like, I'm next to you. I'm not ahead of you, above you, whatever. I'm next to you. I go through this with you. So I
Yeah.
think that that is, really powerful as well. So for the people listening, what is kind of like I want to say like an average day for you, or like something that you do, um, that, maybe people could be like, oh, I'm going to take some of his tips like during the day. Like, what's like an average day for you and like how you hold yourself to this, very high standard of like identifying what is a good day versus like a little bit of off day for you?
Yeah, great question. So I structure my schedule like I'm a solo entrepreneur, I guess. I hate
Mhm.
using that word for whatever reason, but I don't know. It is what it is. Um, so I keep client meetings 3 days a week.
Okay.
And in those 3 days, I'm booked pretty
Mhm.
significantly. Mondays and Fridays I use for flex days, so I don't keep any client meetings in either one of those days. But I'll meet with what I call a center of influence, so network. Do a lot of my marketing, do a lot of the financial, like the actual running of the business on Friday specifically. But I also leave that open to be able to live life. It's one of the things that I'm a big proponent of, and I have been since I was 20, really, is being very in tune with. It's an uncomfortable conversation that I've noticed that now. It's very comfortable for me, but for most people, it's super uncomfortable. I'm I'm very, very connected with my mortality.
Mhm.
I've got this goes into like what I do on a weekly basis and a daily basis. Like I've got literally what I call my death calendar. It's actually called the 4,000 week calendar. It's my life in weeks. I got the largest version of it. It's like 3 feet tall and 2 feet wide on my wall, and it's got all these boxes. You guys can look it up. It's called my life in weeks calendar. Um,
And I'm gonna have to look that up.
you should. And every morning, this weird obsession that I have is I word it very strategically. I
Mhm.
get to cross off and fill in a box. And every
Yeah,
week you fill in a box and it goes to age 88. Um, and
love that.
I'm looking at it now and it's very depressingly getting about halfway full. And you know, and
Yeah,
that is a part of this weekly and this daily thought process that I have. That do I think that every second counts? Yeah, but am I obsessed with every second? No.
right.
But what I do is I try and live days with intention. And one of the things that I've got this thing I've now coined. It's actually, you probably can't see it, but it's this Morse code that I've got tattooed, and I call the Bellawood Creed. And so the Bellawood Creed is simply because I said I would. Uh, I learned my obstacle. It became the way. Um, I faced my enemy. It was me. Learned. I remembered that I must die, and so I lived. And that's subconsciously how I start every day, and how that manifests inside of a real day for me is that I do this. It's a little top three to-do list, right? I started off with things that I'm grateful for, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I do think that's important. I didn't used to do that ever, honestly,
Mhm.
and I do think that's important.
Mhm.
And then I start my day off with every day with three top things: one personal, one professional, and then one flex, depending on the day. And those things those things are non-negotiable, and that word is incredibly important to those top three. Now there's 15 things on my important things to do today list, you know, but there are three that are non-negotiable: one for myself or my family, one for my business, and then one for whichever one in that day is taking more of a priority for me.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that business owners struggle with is when you get out of that corporate culture, no one's looking at you anymore. You've got to define these things for yourself. And so for me, I've been on a big fitness journey for the last couple of years. And I think that was something I gave myself a lot of grace on, and I've come a long way, and I'm very, very proud of that. But so one thing for me personally is working out, but working around that schedule. And I don't know, Lauren, I'm not sure why was so like mind blowing to me last year, but you have a tendency to like work a ton, and work on the business in the business.
Yeah.
When does it ever really stop? I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to say that I know that at all. But what I do know is that can get out of hand pretty quickly. And I
Hmm.
always define this like workout schedule for me, which used to be a very, very, very important piece of my life, all the way up into my mid 20s. And for almost a decade, to be honest with you, I fell way off that wagon, truthfully. And it manifested in my life so vividly to me so many times. And where this is going is, so now I work out literally Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And why that's so different for me now is when I would struggle to work out during the week and do like that typical 5 days a week or 4 days a week and then take a couple of days off, it just
Hmm.
didn't work because I'm trying to get to the office by 7. I'm trying to do this. And so giving yourself grace to do whatever works for you. And again, going back to that authenticity part, I don't care. Like I have no idea how old you are, but one of the things, and this is just a kind of a rant on the fitness stuff. Like if you're in your early 20s, I'm sorry, I'm not listening to a single thing that you talk about when it comes to physical fitness. I'm not.
Yeah. I wish I was in my early 20s still, but no, my late 30s. I'm
Right. Me too.
37.
Okay. Yeah, me too. I'm 38. All right, perfect. So
Yeah.
now we're on the same. So like, hey people, I'm super happy that you're 25 and you can eat
Yeah.
whatever you want and do whatever you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
I was that guy too.
Me too. I was that girl.
Yeah,
Not
wait
now.
till wait till you get to 35 and beyond, and then talk to me
Yeah.
about how easy this is, right?
Yeah.
And that's just a little rant, but it means give yourself grace. And how that translates again in a real world application is give yourself grace. For me, it's
Yeah.
I'm going to work out 4 days a week. It's movement. It's not 90 minutes of soul crushing workout.
Yeah.
It's I'm going to do something non-negotiably those 4 days, and the 3 days I do whatever I want. If I want to do yoga, cool. If I want to walk, cool. If I want to do
Yeah.
nothing, cool.
Yeah.
But having those standards, I think is really, really important. And then saving time, on this day-to-day life to make sure that you get burned out so quickly.
Yeah.
And we don't know it until it's honestly too late. And then you got to do this whole restructure or the hard reset, I call it.
Yeah.
So just take time and give yourself grace. I'm reading this really good book right now called Rest. And I think defining what is restful for you actually matters a lot. And one of the things that's restful for me is this like actually getting some like minuscule things done.
Yeah.
Like, and that doesn't seem restful to some people, but it actually is restful for me because I can't actually rest if some of those things aren't done. So making sure that even if it requires you to say, hey, look, I'm going to need another 30 minutes at the office tonight, or I'm going to stay here a little bit, just have that conversation with yourself. I talk to myself constantly like a crazy person, but
Other people would think you're crazy, but we all get it here.
yeah, you're right. Right. So that's what I would say. The quick tips
Yeah.
is I think that it's massively important. Almost every single one of my clients does it at this point in time is make your top 3, one personal, one professional,
Yeah.
one flex, and make it non-negotiable. And that's the key is would you, no matter what capacity of life, would you fire yourself if you didn't get this done today? And if you wouldn't, then that's not the thing you write down. And that's important.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. I was going to say, yeah, that's definitely like, okay. Yeah, like today, for example, it's raining here. I was like, I don't feel like, I have all these things to do, drop my daughter off at school. And I was like, I could easily just go home. And I was like, nope, I'm going to go to the gym and run on the treadmill. And like, I felt better after I
Yep.
did that.
You feel better. Yep.
And I think that that's really important. And also, it's like, do I really want to disappoint myself? Like that was my whole thing driving. And then it was like talking to myself, right? Like, okay,
Yep.
no, I'll just go to the gym. But I feel like all of us are there. And I think, especially when it comes to shifting out of like you said earlier about when you're in corporate America, people are watching you, people are like on top of you, and it's like now you're working for yourself. It takes a special person to like you know put yourself into those like that mindset, I should say. And I know that you
Mm-hmm.
call it like operating system, but like what are some warning signs that people could maybe realize, or maybe there's like outdated I guess I'll just call it software in like leadership or business, like if they're in this place like right now, because I'm noticing a lot of people are in this place right now.
Early warning signs. Yeah. I think the earliest warning sign is when your actions are not in alignment with your purpose. I think that's the earliest warning sign that you consistently choose. We'll get real here for a second. My wife used to say, my wife's name is Lauren too, by the way.
Oh,
Um,
she's amazing because her name's Lauren.
she is amazing. But she used to say this funny thing to me that I never took that seriously until she kept saying it to me. And she used to call herself the low totem. She used to say, "I'm low totem," and I used to laugh because it's kind of a funny thing, like low totem, like a totem pole, right?
Right.
And in my mind, I obviously, well, not I guess not obviously, but in my mind, she wasn't even close to the. She's not even everything that I'm doing is really for us. It's just us two. That's our choice. And but like everything that I do is for us. And so when she would say that, I would laugh it off and joke about it. And then it actually started to like I almost like started taking that person like, well, what do you mean? Like getting annoyed by that. Like, well, what do you mean? No, 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 no. And the reality was I had the mindset and my actions for me that was the way that I was being. But for her, I wasn't showing up that way.
Yeah.
And when I went back to my purpose of what I'm all doing it for, it's like, yeah, just because that all of these actions that you're doing are in support of that goal, if she's my most important thing and I'm doing this all for us, then maybe I should have asked her what she wanted. Like, what would you have preferred me to get this next thing, to go on this next vacation, get this different Airbnb on a vacation that we're already going on, or go on walks every day, which requires me to be home 45 minutes sooner? She would answer 45 minutes sooner, go on walks every day. Interesting, right? Is that I was in misalignment. I'm just using myself as a personal example. I was in
Right.
misalignment with what my goals and my aspirations were. For me, I was in total alignment. We're going to do this. We're building a house. We're doing all this cool stuff. And that requires a cost that we talked about earlier that I'm willing to pay. But why didn't I ask the person that I was doing it all for what they wanted, right? If that's now everyone's purpose is different. Yours might not be generated around somebody else, and that's totally fine. But
Right.
for me, that's the earliest warning sign is taking a look. I'll give you another example if you're okay with it and for your
Sure.
audience too, right? So
Yeah.
you just gave an example of picking up your daughter, I believe, or dropping her off.
Yeah.
Um, I
Wait,
had a
I do
client.
both.
Yeah,
But
right.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure. I'm sure. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm sure she does an Uber home. But
I mean, I wish I mean, she would like that because I'm a taxi. She's 6, so like I'm a come on, mom, I gotta get in the taxi, and I'm like, okay, let's go. And it's cost. You gotta call. Give me some money, pennies, whatever. I want some money. Teaching her the
that's
value of
funny.
a dollar, right?
Yeah, I like that. I love that a lot, actually. So I had this client. I won't say his name. I was just about to say his name. I shouldn't say his name. I had this client, and he came about a year and a half ago onto a call, and he was really just out of sorts. And I was like, "What's going on, man? Let's start there. Like, what's up? You're obviously in a different space than he's. I had to, my daughter's sick, and we had to take her. I had to take her to the uh, the doctor, and it's really screwed up my day, and I'm just in a blah blah blah, whatever, whatever. And the
Mhm.
challenge that I had for him was, well, isn't that what you're doing it all for? Like, to be able to do that, to be able to be there for your daughter, like, isn't
Yeah,
that what this is all for? That's what you told me when you hired me as your coach. Like, that's one of the first things I ask is, what is your purpose? Like, what is the thing that you're doing this for?
yeah,
Everything for. And if it's for your family, like his was, that was a kind of a mindset. And we spent the next 40 minutes talking about that, and him getting off the call being like, yeah, that's a really impactful call out, because again, we get so stuck in this day to day to day to day to day of like,
yeah,
I'm going to do this. Maybe it's monetarily, maybe it's a client count, maybe it's a promotion, maybe it's a follower count. I don't really care what your business goals are. It's what are
right.
you doing it for? And when you get out of alignment with that, then you have to call yourself out or have somebody else in your life, mentorship, coach, whatever, be able to have that trusted confidant to be able to call you out to. But that's the earliest warning sign, when your day-to-day actions are starting to interfere with what you're actually doing it all for. And you know it deep down.
Right.
You do.
Yeah, you
It's
know.
take action about it is the early sign, is you knowing it on the inside. The it's too late is having that sit down conversation with your loved ones about how your actions are in alignment with what you're trying to build.
Yeah, and I do love that you just said that because my husband just said that to me probably last week. I think I was complaining about something or saying something or whatever, and he goes, "Lauren, why did you start this again?" And here I'm like, it just like stopped me, and I'm like, "Oh, I mean, it was for my daughter. That was, it was for me, and then creating the legacy too." And then him just saying that, I was able to be like, okay, obviously complaining about this one thing is something that I let go too long, cross a boundary, whatever it was, like I forget
Yeah.
exactly, but when you just said that, yeah, like it pushed you kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
you just stop. Like I mean, at least I did. I just stopped. I'm like, you're right. Like here I'm complaining about this and I'm not focused on like why I'm doing this or remembering of like why I started, of
Yeah.
why I'm here. I think that if you don't have that passion behind it, I've also, and I'm saying this too because I've had a few conversations. No, let me just talk about like I feel like I at least talk to about 4 to 5 people a week that come to me and say, Lauren, I need you to help me find my purpose. Like I can't help you find your purpose. I don't. What do you like? I'm asking all these questions, and usually it's on my free 30-minute calls that this comes up. I need you to help me find my purpose. And I'm like, okay, great. Okay, this could be longer than a 30-minute call. But my one question is like, what are you passionate about? What would you say if somebody came to you and said, I need help finding my purpose? Like it's a new business owner. They want to start a business. They don't have any idea about how to do any of it.
Yeah.
But they know that they don't have a job anymore and they want to build a business for themselves. Like, what would you say to them?
Yeah. So I mean, I actually have a model for this. It's called building your professional and personal blueprint. And that goes into 4 aspects. The first one is purpose. And so I deal with this topic a lot.
Hmm.
And one of the first things I would say is there's a differentiation between what your business's purpose is and what your purpose is. And let's be really clear on what we're trying to solve right now. Are we trying to find your purpose or the purpose to start this business? Two way different things, in my opinion. Should they
Yeah.
align? Absolutely. Are they different? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I mean, you could, I think where I immediately go to is that the Japanese or the Ikigai version of purpose, which is what are you good at? What do you like to do? What does the world need? What can you be paid for? Right. And if we stick to those, at least first 3, I think that's more on that personal vision. So like, what are you good at? What do you like to do? What does the world need? What can you uniquely provide? Like and that's more of that, again, sorry, that professional version of it. When it comes to the personal version of it, I often ask people simply, what did your gut tell you? What are you doing it all for? What is the why? That's really the purpose, right? Like Simon Sinek says, I start with why. I think that is powerful. And then where I think the follow-up question, so what I encourage clients to do is like, it takes 90 seconds from your gut. Tell me your why. Like, what is that purpose that you live for? What are you doing it? What are you doing everything for? Okay. And then the next one, the very follow-up where they get in the meat and potatoes is, now, when was that called into question? And what did you do? How did you respond? How did you react? How did you shift? How did you get back to it? Or how did you fail? And I think that ends up creating the space of conversation where you can actually dive into what your purpose actually is. When was it tested, to your point earlier? When was this tested? And how did you respond? Because that's going to tell us a lot about those aspects of how you responded are really more of what your purpose actually ends up being. Is I cared enough to do this, Um, yeah, I think that's really where I like to go. I mean, we can go super super deep into the purpose thing. There are definitely a bunch of questions that you can ask and dive deeper, but what I like to do is get the gut reaction first and then go from there.
Yeah.
Get the gut reaction. How was it challenged? How do you respond?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I know we go usually super deep. I don't people joke with me all the time. They're like, Lauren, when you ask a question, can it be surface level? I was like, I don't know how to do that. I'm sorry. I always go like, we gotta figure out why. Like we gotta for me, it's like my entire being is like, why? Why? But why? Why
Yeah.
do you do that? Why? Like I'm just a curious person. And now that I'm an adult, I can ask why and not be told.
Yeah, right.
It's like that because it is, or whatever, whatever my parents
Yep.
told me or whatever. So it's more of like, that's something deeper. So I do love that. I love that it's very, you can make it very simple because I think what I noticed too, even doing like, my 90-second framework, the mind and the ego always wants to take over of like, oh, you're
Yep.
looking at something that's not safe, you're going to die. And like, we're not going to die here.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, for any or all listeners, even especially high achievers, who feels pressure, but maybe they don't want to like lose themselves in success, like where would they start? Just like one simple tip.
Ooh, lose themselves. Um, could you repeat it real quick?
Sure. So for any, I was saying any listeners, but
Yep.
specifically high achievers, I think I need to point that out.
Sure.
Who feel pressure, but they don't want to lose themselves in success. Where would they start? Like just one thing. Where would they start?
Yeah. It's honestly that top three, that personal thing. Make sure you hold true to that, and that should be a spot on your calendar that is just like that meeting with an A level client or an A level prospect that you keep, and that's
Mhm.
really really important. Going back to my story, I'll use that again. One of the things that I decided to do was every single Friday night is date night. Sounds really simple and easy, but for high achievers, entrepreneurs, it becomes more challenging.
Yeah.
And no matter what, that is kept. Now, do we do everything? Do we do anything all Friday nights? No, of course not. We're grown-ups. But sometimes
Right.
sitting on the couch is kind of a great date. Um,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
but that has to be important. And that's one of those things that you said, I believe you said the word, you lose yourself, like losing the focus around it. Like you have to have those abilities and understand what rest is to you too. And I think that's a piece of it, is holding those things true, keeping those things sacred, and working around, making sure that, again, like that is your call, right? That you hold true to yourself, not just million miles an hour working till 2 a.m. all the time. I got to do this, got to do that. I'll take care of it. I'll figure it out. Awesome. Keep the personal thing every single day and do it. Give yourself that win.
I love that. And John, where can everybody find you?
Yeah. So my business name is Bellawood Coaching. So it's www.bellawood, BELLEAUWOOD.coach, not com, .coach. Um, Same thing, Bellawood_coaching, spelled the same way. That's my Instagram. And then LinkedIn, it's just Jonathan Sheldon, owner of Bellawood Coaching. Really, realistically, if they want to follow, Instagram is probably the best place to do it.
Mhm.
I post a 90-second video every single month, or what is it, Fridays now? Every single Friday. There's no CTAs. It's not a call to action. It's just me giving back, and that's the place that I choose to do that. Is a topic. They're all professionally made. I'm really proud of them, and that's what matters to me. Talk about one thing that I like to do. There's no alternative motive to that Instagram page. It is 100% for the public, and that comes through in the way that I talk about it too.
I love that. And I was going to say, if you're watching us on YouTube, you have to look at his background. It's very professional. And to go check out his social media because I'm like, I like his website. I need to find out. I need to talk to him about who did his website.
You know who did my website?
You did. Okay. Well, we have to have
I,
a
I wrote it.
conversation.
I wrote it. I bought it. So this is funny. Like, I actually bought a template on Etsy from a
No
graphic
way. I
designer.
like it. I was looking at your website and I was like, I need to
Thank
ask
you.
him
I really
about
appreciate that.
this. Yeah. I'm like, you go check it out. You guys got to go check it out.
Yeah, please do. Yeah. Please do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so thank you so much for being here and all of your wisdom. And if this episode resonated with you and you feel that somebody wants to go deeper into maybe redefining their voice, maybe even building a business rooted in alignment, you need to go check out all of his links. If you're watching this, like I said, you can check below in the description box. Or if you're listening to us, they'll be below in the show notes. And I, again, want to invite you into the Enlightened Misfits Sisterhood. And this is where we go deeper live calls, human design insight, and real conversations about visibility, leadership, nervous system safety, and growth. And those links will be below also in the show notes. We would love to have you inside. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your week, and I will see you next week.